One of the many strengths of the Splatoon series is its gear system, giving players the ability to mix and match abilities to play their weapons however they want to. While most abilities end up being stat boosts, there is a category of abilities, sometimes called the exclusive abilities, that have special effects or conditions that can change the way you play the game. All of these exclusive abilities are pretty strong, even the more niche ones see play as they still excel in their niche. But that is except for one. Or more like 3, actually, but for the sake of scope I only care about 1. Tenacity is probably the most misunderstood and least used ability in the game, and it's not hard to see why. It's pretty simple in premise, but in practice can be a bit awkward. Simply put, Tenacity gives you passive special charge, similar to what you get in the ranked modes, that scales with how many more players the enemy team has alive than your team does. So if everyone in the game is alive, you get nothing. If a teammate dies, that's a 1-player difference, so you get some passive special charge until they respawn. If another dies, that's a 2-player difference, so you get even more, and if another dies, well, the game's kind of already lost at that point, but it's a 3-player difference, so you get even more special charge as a bonus, I guess. Easy enough, but from there the misconceptions start, because Tenacity has earned for itself the reputation of being a BM ability. The one where you get offended if you go into solo queue and see a teammate with that equipped. Because, well, what are the use cases for Tenacity? It activates when your teammates die. Good teammates don't die, only bad teammates die. So Tenacity is the ability you use when you expect to have bad teammates, right? Well, let's imagine a scenario where you have 2 teams facing each other that may have different team compositions but are otherwise of equal skill. Equal in aim, in movement, in decision making, and most importantly, over the course of the game, you expect them both to have a roughly equal amount of deaths. Can there be a reason for Tenacity to be used in a situation like this? Well, yes, actually. When one team has quick respawn but the other doesn't. Because while deaths may be equal, the team without quick respawn will be dead a lot longer, which gives time for Tenacity to activate. It's actually quite clever, I think. The quick respawn effect is quite powerful since it allows 1-for-1 or 2-for-2 trades to go into the quick respawn user's favour. You respawn sooner, which gets you back into position sooner, which gives you more time to do things. Time is a resource, after all. Tenacity then tries to even the playing field by turning the extra time your opponents get into special charge for you. This is also why I'm convinced that the Tenacity buff in patch 5.0 was an attempt to try and add some counterplay to Tacticooler that wholly failed, because back then we were in the early days of Tacticooler meta. There's also a use case where you use it instead of a main of special charge on your headpiece when stacking special charge up, but please, don't do that. Unfortunately though, Tenacity in its current form isn't actually all that good at it, and it fails for 2 main reasons. Firstly, it just fails at being an ability. The strength of Splatoon's gear system is that it allows you to mix and match abilities to make a set unique to you that lets you play your weapon how you want. If you like constantly fighting the enemy team and like having explosive openings, Opening Gambit is great for you as it supports that playstyle. If you like sharking, then Ninja Squid makes that a lot easier for you and makes it a lot more effective. But what playstyle does Tenacity promote if you ignore the special spam? At the end of the day, it's a counterpick ability. You don't run it to play into your own playstyle or strategy, but instead to beat the opponents. Whether or not Tenacity will be useful or not is not in your control. It's about what strategy your opponents are playing towards, and it's the only ability that does this. This becomes a problem in solo queue. You don't know what team you'll be facing until you're in the game, and once you're in the game, it's too late to switch. This makes it incredibly difficult to justify bringing Tenacity. Like, sure, there might be games where you match into a team running Inkbrush and Tetra all spamming quick respawn, but that's too rare to justify sacrificing an entire main to Tenacity. And what's worse is that none of it matters if your team has quick respawn. In that case, your team will have an uptime advantage over the enemy team, significantly reducing Tenacity's value. This is less of an issue in a competitive team setting where you often know your opponent in advance and have time to research them, to look at what weapons they play, what comps they run, and what gear they like to use. But there's another issue that can get in the way. In a competitive setting, meta matters a lot more. If quick respawn is so strong that you're willing to dedicate an entire gear slot to countering it, you're probably also running quick respawn, let's be honest. Case in point, Tacticooler. Because eventually everything comes back to Tacticooler. It has been at the top of the meta for probably over a year now, and any team seriously trying to win an event will be running Tacticooler. It is basically a requirement at this point, with some very niche strategies that sometimes don't run it. Cooler gives unconditional maximum quick respawn, so in theory, Tenacity could be used as a counter. However, Tenacity only works if you also don't have a Cooler of your own, and no team is seriously going to drop Cooler just so that they can run Tenacity. If Tenacity was able to be ran alongside the thing it was designed to counter but had some other drawback, it would be a bit better. It could be like a side grade to the comp that has its own weaknesses but matches up better into the meta. But because you essentially have to choose between Tenacity or quick respawn. It's really hard to use in quick respawn metas. Not that it matters though, because Tenacity has another, even bigger issue. But before that, I just want to ask that if you've been enjoying this so far, I would really appreciate if you could drop this video a like, and if you're feeling especially generous, a subscribe too if you haven't already. I made it my goal to hit 1k subs by the end of this year, and so any help at all is much appreciated. When trying to build a gear set, you have a lot of good options. Headgear especially has some of the best abilities in the game. When their conditions are met, Comeback gives 72 AP worth of stats, Opening Gambit gives 120 AP worth, and Last Ditch Effort, being a bit easier to activate, only gives 54 AP, an entire gear set. The weakest of these abilities, Opening Gambit, is only considered to be the weakest because it can be a bit inconsistent at times, but it still gives 120 AP. That's more than 2 whole gear sets worth in one ability. If you compare these headgear exclusive abilities to Tenacity, you'll see why nobody actually wants to run it. There's too much strong competition. So I've been trying to dance around this like the whole time, but yeah, Tenacity's effect is pretty small. So let's see how strong it really is. Let's say your teammate trades with a cooler buffed opponent. There will be a 4-second window where your team is respawning, but the opponent has already respawned. According to these numbers from Wikipedia that I have stolen, you will be gaining 3.26 points per second for 4 seconds. In total, that will amount to 13-ish points. If you're playing a weapon with 200 points of special, you will have gained just over 6% of your special. That's not a lot. But okay, what if it's a 3-for-3 trade rather than a 1-for-1? Well, that's 30 points of your special, which for a 200p weapon is 15% for your entire team dying. Okay, but what if your entire team dies without trading? Well, you should probably lose the game at that point, but that's also 57-ish points, or just about 28% of your special meter? Yeah, so Tenacity is pretty weak. It suffers a lot from the incredibly strong competition of the headgear exclusive abilities. How can you justify running Tenacity when you could instead be running Last Ditch Effort, an ability that only activates when you need it, and it gives nearly an entire gear set worth of stats? Or you could be running Comeback, an ability whose activation condition synergizes really well with the strongest special in the meta, and who also gives 12 AP of 6 abilities, special charge included. Even when facing a quick respawn team, you will always get more mileage out of the headgear exclusives. Except it doesn't just compete with the exclusives. It also competes with special charge up, a stackable ability that doesn't have an activation condition. For a 200p special, special charge up essentially reduces your points for special by 16 points, or 8%, which may not sound like much, but it is unconditional, meaning you don't need to worry about what comp you are playing or facing. It can be ran with tactical. You don't have to worry about your teammates dying mid-match to activate it, it's just flat points for special. Another thing is that it's active even when you're winning. Using specials in winning situations to snowball the game further and further into your favour is very strong, and Tenacity just doesn't help with that. But the final nail in the coffin for Tenacity, in my opinion, is that special charge isn't a headgear exclusive ability, meaning you can run it alongside such powerful abilities as Last Ditch Effort, Ninja Squid and Stealth Jump all at once. When a headgear exclusive is being compared to and considered weaker than a stackable ability, you know something has gone wrong somewhere. So, can Tenacity be saved? No, thank you for watching. But like seriously, no, I don't think it can. It is a flawed ability. Not only is its design and purpose incongruous with Splatoon 3's gear system, it has so few dials you can turn when balancing it, it is incredibly difficult to make good without making it too strong. Seriously, it only has one parameter, number go up or number go down. If number too high, it will just become the special spam ability regardless of what strategy your opponents are going. Number too low, and it's never worth picking. I genuinely cannot think of any way to buff it or any way to rework it that would still keep its identity but would also make it worth using without promoting some very unfun playstyles. But I do see a way for Tenacity to be relevant in the next game. In my last video, which you should totally check out, I proposed that quick respawn should be a mechanic in the game that everyone gets access to. Now the idea of everyone getting quick respawn and not having anything to counterbalance it is kind of scary to me, as that is a fundamental shift in the game's core mechanics larger than anything we've ever seen before. Probably. And so, what if everyone also had a slight counter to quick respawn built in as well? What if tenacity is also just a mechanic in the game? Players get passive special charge, just like in ranked mode, depending on how many more players the enemy team has alive. Because this would just be an effect that everyone has and doesn't cost a main slot, it doesn't necessarily need to be strong, just enough to somewhat counterbalance the effects of quick respawn. In fact, making it too strong would be an issue, as it would make leaning into QR builds harder and harder to justify, as it would just give the enemy team too many special points. So while I don't think tenacity can be saved, if they decide to make quick respawn a mechanic, I think tenacity should also follow. But that about covers my thoughts. If you have your own ideas for how tenacity should be buffed, or you think it's fine as it is, let me know in the comments. But with that, hasta la vista.